So I'm Eric Fincher, and I live in Decatur, Texas. And at the time we were working on the project, we were working with Robert Reid Studios in Springtown, and that's where we assembled everything and did all the work there. I still do the same thing. I still do exhibit work. A lot of just fabrication for trade show models, educational models, working exhibits, that kind of thing. But I do it from my home now in Decatur. So I moved my shop from Springtown to Decatur. Well, all of our work is basically come through Robert Reid. And so with Rob's relationship with the museum and the work that he does, fossil hunting and all that, he had a relationship with Jim Diffley here that was a curator before we started the project, who of course did the bulk of the digging of the project. So we did a lot of work for Robert through the years, and that's really how we got connected with it. Yeah, it was a lot of work. Like I said, we worked on the project for over a year. We started probably in the fall of 2008 and finished it in December of 2009. When we first started the project, it was just coming in as bits and pieces because we had real bone that's there, and then we had to figure out how to make and manufacture the rest of the bone structure that was there. So that was a challenge. So we had to work a lot with Dale and Mike on figuring out how are we going to do this. We were really kind of lost in the beginning, and it was a really slow go because we had to develop techniques of how we're going to make this look like real bone, what kind of processes we're going to use. And that's when we had the Jay Richardson sculpting for us. He would come in and he worked the whole project with us, trying to figure out ways to make things happen. Whenever the biggest challenge was the leg bones and everything else, they weren't too difficult because we had a lot of those already. It's the vertebra, the caudal of the neck and the tail. So much of that stuff was missing. And the biggest part of it was the pelvis and the skull. And the pelvis was still in a block, I guess at SMU being excavated, and it was years away from being processed all the way. So with Mike Polson's help and his expertise, he was able to do a lot of 3D modeling of what a lot of the stuff looked like. So like all the vertebra, he would actually use a CNC machine and carve them out of foam. And so we would take maybe one vertebra and we would kind of cheat it. We'd say, okay, this is L5. We're going to use it for L5, L6, and L7 until we have to get smaller or larger, until we get to the real bones that we had. The real bones were challenging too because they're so crushed and misshapen. So you kind of had to blend, figure out how to make all that work and fit together. Gary Lovett, it was Gary Lovett, myself, Jay Richardson, and Jim Diffley. And anyway, we worked on that project, I guess, yeah, because it was for a year, but those guys, super talented. Gary was kind of the guy that, real mechanical minded. You give him a problem, he could figure out the simplest way to do it. So simple solution to a complicated issue, Gary's your guy. And he started working on the armature to hold the whole thing up. So while we were working on armature, Jay and Jim was doing a lot of the communication between Dale and Mike because he's the scientist. He dug the thing up. He knew so much about it. We couldn't have done it without him. Rob Reid is doing all the research on the top end of how can we cheat to make this thing quicker. In fact, we ended up buying a Camarasaur skeleton, full scale, and using bits and pieces and modifying this Camarasaur to look like the Paluxysaurus. So we wouldn't have so much structure to build from nothing. And so that was kind of cool. So we were doing all those processes all the time, figuring out how to make bones look like bones from foam. So we would take urethane resins, mix it together with calcium carbonate, make a powder, and thicken it all up. And we could just brush it on, and the more powder we put on, the rougher textures we would get. And Rick Doobie, artist out of Greenwood, would come in and he would paint and make them look real, do all the staining. And then he actually did a little bit of sculpting for us too. There was always challenges with Mike and Dale trying to figure out, how is this articulated? You know, what's the latest? How do we articulate this? And we'd send pictures. Is this what it's supposed to look like? Or is it not what it's supposed to look like? And give us some input and feedback on that. And throughout that whole process, the year long, we managed to get it together. No, that was it. Yeah. We have all the, we had to build armatures and structures to kind of hold things together. You can see in some of the build photos to just kind of help position things. And then it was a lot of fun. Yeah, well, I was thinking we had 2 accidents the whole time, the whole year we were there. Jay was working on something, and with holding all that stuff together, you've got boards and nails and screws, and he was coming down off of a ladder, and there was a screw head sticking up. Of course, we had to have screw heads stick up to hold the bones in place, so just something to capture the bones. And he was coming off the ladder, and he hung his arm, middle of his forearm, on one of the screws and just ripped it all the way to the muscle. It's like, oh my gosh. So to haul him up, he had to get some stitches. And towards the end of the project, we were setting the thing up in the shop because it's so huge. We had 2 forklifts, and we were holding the front end and the back end with like a T. And we were raising it up and getting it in position. Earlier that year, just a few weeks before, Gary had to have shoulder reconstruction surgery. And he'd been through physical therapy, but he just didn't have full range of motions. And the orthopedic surgeon said, we need to put you to sleep and manipulate that thing so you can get your full range of motion. And physical therapy was so rough on him, he said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm happy with the way it is. So that had gone on, and while we were setting this thing up with the forklifts, the back end starts to slide off the end of the forks, and we're all standing there, and there's guys underneath there working it. And I'm on the phone talking to Rob about an issue on the dinosaur, and I just look up and I say, hey guys, look out, it's fixing to fall. About that time it fell, and it was like a T-post, the center of it, not really a T-post, but the shape of a T. Gary grabbed it to cushion the blow, and as it was just too heavy, he couldn't stop it. And as it hit the floor, everything was fine, but it tore everything loose in his shoulders, turned it black and blue, but then he had full range of motion in his shoulder after that. So that was kind of one of the funny stories that kind of happened, is that Gary didn't go to the doctor. He just let the dinosaur manipulate his shoulders so he could get full range of motion. And then it was fun installing it here because we had all the guys here and we were working like ants, putting the thing together. And of course, you see the time-lapse video of it. It was a lot of fun. I think the Fort Worth Star-Telegram came out one day and did a story on it. And Rick Doobie is actually, there's a photo in the Star-Telegram of him painting on a dinosaur. Well, we had to label everything. The armature was so big, and the way we had to structure it, the whole structure, we had to be very careful. We had a moving band. We wrapped everything up in packing blankets. and brought them all here and had to lay everything out and get it all in order, and then bring in the base structure and the big structure. Everything just really bolted together. We designed it so that everything would just slide in on a pipe, or just different clamp it and bolt it together, so that the real bones, the real bones we had to be careful with and shape everything around it to hold it in place. Those were the challenging ones because they were so heavy. But yeah, we brought it in here, and it took, I think, 2 or 3 days to get it all assembled. No, it was while the construction and renovation was going on, so it was closed at the time. Yeah, well, at the beginning it was very frustrating because we just didn't know. We're mechanical and artistic and everything else. We can make things, but we don't have any idea of what this thing is really supposed to look like. Like when Rob's idea was to bring this Camarasaur in to help us, and it did. We used bits and pieces of it, but it was a completely different animal. Nothing was the same. I mean, we could use the rib bones, but the vertebrae weren't. So we were thinking we could use a whole lot more of it, but it wasn't even close, other than the size of it. So at the very beginning, we were struggling with mostly the spine and the necks, all the big structures. We didn't have a skull either. We had to come up with that. We modified the Camarasaur skull, which doesn't look anything like the Paluxysaurus, but there's bits and pieces of it in there, just structure and teeth. But Dale and Mike were a big help with that. Once we got them busy and helping, mostly, I guess, Mike, making some parts to get us off of high center to get things moving. Because Jay would sculpt one out, and it would take a while to sculpt one vertebra. We would make molds off of it and then start making others, but you could only go so far with your molds because the sizing was all wrong. So that's what was being so slow, and it wasn't progressing very quick. And that's when Mike came in and said, well, I think I can help you guys by doing this. And so he would bring stuff out, and that's really what got us off a high center and got things moving. Plus, he had to make the pelvis for us, because the pelvis was just in a block, which got us moving. I think originally Rob was wanting us to have an adjustable base to locate the feet, and we're just like, this is just too big, too heavy. We can't have any room for adjustment in this thing. We've got to have it. We got to know where it's going to sit, where its feet are going to be located, and how they're going to be located, because that's going to hold the whole thing up. And so we got that from Dale, and the position of the feet. Just turning this 3 degrees this way or 5 degrees this way. Some of that was challenging because we'd have to take pictures of it and say, well, no, that's not quite right. Well, what do we need to do? And it's hard to communicate that kind of over the phone. So there's a lot of pictures being taken, and we would take images of things and blow them up on the wall to get them full scale, just so we could make adjustments to all the resources we could find. That's part of what Rob was doing. He was finding this resource after resource after resource, just bringing this stuff all the time, saying, here's one, here's this, here's that, that's similar. And it was a long, arduous process, but very satisfying once it was all done. It was kind of exciting. It was like, yay, it's party. I told Rob, and I told a few other people that on the top of the pelvis, where you can't see, we all signed our names to it, that worked on it. So it's there, just nobody can see it because it's way up there on the top. So. Oh, I guess it's just your life takes you the direction it needs to go. You know, I had a degree in art, but I worked in a lot of construction. And so when I started working for Gary at the time, we were doing a lot of the modeling, a lot of the exhibit work. He was very mechanical, like a machinist, engineer type, though he doesn't have the title of engineer. Like I said, he's very good at mechanically thinking and putting things together. My background going through construction and into this, I can kind of do a little bit of everything. So, you know, I can do some of the mechanical I can do the artwork, machine work I can do, the fabrication I can do. You know, I can do all that because of my background, and that's kind of how it led into this. So my thing is, oh, I think I can do that, you know. So, but with Jay, one of the best sculptors I know, he's very good at what he does. He can see details that most people can't see, and he's very gifted and talented. Rick, being the artist that he is, he paints murals, and his whole house is full of paintings. And that's just his gifting. And Jim just knows everything. You know, he just, like his whole family calls him Mr. Google. So Jim can do a lot of that stuff too. And so just a group of guys that we've just all known each other over the years, worked real well together. And everybody took their own different part. Like Rick was doing the painting and some of the plastic coating. Jay would do sculpting, plastic coating. Gary and I were working on the armature and structure and trying to make sure it all fits together and works and is structurally safe and sound. That's kind of how we ended up dividing the work up, where Jim was our liaison, Jim and Rob, to Dale and Mike on what the thing should look like. Yeah, I mean, we had no idea we'd be building a dinosaur. And we've done some other dinosaur work too. At the time, we did have a Triceratops skull that we were working on too for a private collector. This is fun. You know, it's more organic than a lot of the stuff that we typically do. You know, where it's like the straight lines and everything's got to fit the drawing. It's got to be perfect. And that's where these guys, Jay and the artist type guys, that's where they thrive. You know, organic. Oh, I love this. You know, no hard set rules. They want to color outside the lines. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, yeah, we've done some work for, and I don't know how it all goes through Rob because of his connections, but from all the way up to Montana, some focus points we've done for the Historical Society up there, done several of those. And it even, everybody kind of works together. Karen Carr, we've used her to help us with some groundwater conservation districts where we do mobile learning labs for them. And that kind of, everybody's kind of interconnected. You know, I'll call Jay and say, hey, I need some rock sculptures for this. And, you know, it's a neat little small group, but everybody's got their own unique talents, and it all just works so well together when we do get to work together. Most changed much. Yeah, when we first started back in the mid-90s, we were building things off of paper prints, drawing it. Rob would draw us up something, so I need this made. And Rob is still that way, to where when we started working with Mike, he's had a little 3D scanner, scanning a little bitty rock and taking half a day to do it, to where you can just do it in minutes now. That's the first time I'd seen that. Whereas now we're doing 3D scanning and 3D printing to help whereas before everything was done strictly by hand. And you still want to keep those skills in place because you can't do everything that way. But yeah, it's changed a lot. The 3D modeling and CAD systems. has come a long way, and I think it's going to continue to grow. And now we've got AI coming in, who knows where the future is going to be for that. For what I do, I don't really. I have aspirations for AI as far as the medical field, for people with diseases and cures and all that. I think that's probably the best use of it. But, I don't really know. Haven't really thought about it that much other than, I don't know. I don't know as far as for what I do, because most everything that we do, it gets brought to us. We want this. So, well, okay. Some things have to be created. And I know, and working with Rob, he's very old school and very traditional, but that's what makes some of the things that we do unique, that it is that way. So it's not all flash and all this and computer generated. It's actual something that's functioning and working. It's not what I expected. The creek bed, you look around, think, really, there was a dinosaur here? How did you, a lot of this Jim said, how do you find this? I mean, how did you recognize it was there? And then he started going into some of the history of it. I said, was there anything left at all? And I said, well, it's pretty much all picked over. So, in fact, we had reproduced a dig site here at the museum when Jim was a curator in one exhibit. But it wasn't the actual Paluxysaurus. There was bits and pieces of it in it, but yeah. But no, Bill and DC were just as sweet as they could be. They, just I guess it's that Toller, Texas. The geography. Jim could explain more about that than I could. It was just. It just didn't seem like there would be anything there. Or how they found it in such a remote place. They're not like Jim, and Rob knows what to look for too. They can look at the geology and see what the structure is and know if there could be something there couldn't be there. When I'm just out there and looking at it, so it's just a dried creek bed. It's just a place for kids to go play. So, yeah, there wasn't anything spectacular about it. Really? Well, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool because, some people don't believe that it's real. Well, we've had our hands on it. We've looked at it and seen it. And to something that massive that was roaming around here, how long ago it was, it's just incredible. It just kind of blows my mind. But, a lot of it was, to me, the biggest part of it is just so many different people of different backgrounds coming together to make this thing happen. What's kind of special, you got these super, like Dale and Mike, really highly educated and intelligent people working with us guys. Our gift is in our hands, and when we all come together, we can make something happen. But it's good to see that, I guess, see people looking at it and say, I can't believe that thing is so big. You see elephant, but this thing is huge. It's weird because it's I don't know how you would. There's not really, I think, any education or training to do actually what we do. It's mostly just figuring out things as you go. I mean, just falling into the right place at the right time. But it's a lot of fun. It can be frustrating at times, but it's being able to figure out how to create something or reproduce something out of nothing. And a lot of people have that talent, but some people think they have that talent, but don't. Because we've had people come in and try to work with us that are supposed to be well, I can really do this, I can do that. And dude, you don't see it. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can do this really well, but this takes a different eye. And so if you have that gifting, I don't even know where you would point someone to. I really don't. Because it's such a strange little niche. I think mostly they just network with people that are doing something similar. But yeah, if that's your passion, you have to realize it's still work. You still have to make something. You can't, it's not just playing all day long. Yeah. So you have to be disciplined in that and then make sure that you are getting stuff done. You have to get things done. I guess my favorite part of it was just the finale. Whenever we were, the 2 days. I think it was 2 long days. It may have been 3 by the time we got everything in there. Just finally assembling it all together. Because I don't think we never had it assembled completely, ever. We had parts of it, but we never had the whole thing completely assembled, ever. And that's just the kind of the way, the nature of the stuff that I do is I have lots of parts, but it's never together until it's completely time for final assembly, painted, it's done. That's the first time you see it together. And so that's really just the finale is just getting it here, getting the guys here and getting it all put together and say, hey, it really did work. We had a plan. We thought we knew what we were doing, and we did. And so, yeah, that was the best part, just seeing it done and finished because we had never seen it completed. Yeah, we would have, well, the leg structure, that all looks good. Okay, let's get that out of the way and get things where we can manage to work on it. Do the back section and the tail section, they all look good. They all seem to fit together, but it was never completely together until we brought it here. There's no super secret. We did tease a little bit behind Dale and Mike's back a little bit. They might think this is funny. We always thought there was some kind of back and forth between Dale and Mike on how things should look. And it was funny. We thought, well, we got to drop a cartoon of them two in a little boxing match because they go, well, Dale says this and Mike says this. Which do we do? And so that's where Jim came in. And Jim would say, well, we're going to do this. Like, good for you, Jim. So, yeah, I think it was just, but maybe interpretation. You know, I don't know who was the expert or whatever. We just thought it was kind of funny because one guy would say one thing and then the other guy would say something else. And well, which do we do on our perspective? So that's the only thing we were kind of teasing them a little bit because they were back and forth. That was the biggest thing. And that's where Jim had to step in and say, well, this is the science today. And it's probably going to change, but we're going with what we know today. And so Jim being Jim and his experience here, and he was very good at that. And of course, he had a relationship with them, so he could do that. So he was key to making it all happen. Whenever Rob talked to Jim, because he had just retired, I said, we really need some help with this. And that's when Rob brought Jim on board to help us with the whole thing. And that's really kind of when it started taking off better because we had our own resident expert because he dug the thing up. But he knew enough that he could help us. And he was a fun, great guy to work with. I didn't know Jim well until we started this project. We're good friends today. So the only other thing I can think of is that, when we originally started the project, we had the real bone and we pulled a lot of molds and things off of it. These things are so old and fragile. You've got to be very careful with them. And sometimes things would just happen and bits and pieces of it would break off and think, what just happened? And you had to get to the point where, okay, we'll put back together what we can, but this thing is it's falling apart in places. And so there would be little tiny bits of bone fragment dust, you couldn't do anything about. But that's just because of handling it and doing everything that we had to do to make it come together. So that was kind of nerve-wracking at the very beginning, but we just kind of got used to it. Well, we've got to fix this, we've got to fix that. It's just the way it is. Well, yeah. And we would coat and we would coat it and we would coat it with a PLA, I think it's what it's called. And still, you would have that happen. And there was a lot of super glue. When they're so heavy, and then you can't move them, and they're already fractured and broken to begin with. And so, yeah, just trying to keep it together. But other than that, it was a lot of fun.